Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "We have art in order not to die from reality." This might seem like an exaggeration, but is it really? How much of your day do you devote to watching television or reading a book or scrolling through social media to find something that sparks an emotional response? Listening to music? All of these are forms of art, and it's impossible to imagine life without them. For this podcast, I plan to talk to creative people from all mediums about their creative process, and also about why and how creativity is important to the culture of America. Welcome to the Song of Roland, American Culture at Full Volume, where we turn everything up to 11.
The proper way to use y'all.
Y'all.
Tell me, does the apostrophe go before or after the
It
A?
don't go at all. What are you talking about?
Before.
Oof.
Thank you. I agree with that.
Wait.
I hate that use it after the A. I can't stand it.
Ellen Jovin is more the Ann Landers of grammar with a grammar table.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
Can you start a sentence with and or but?
I do it all the time.
Boom!
I'm a huge Oxford comma person.
Yes!
And it drives me crazy
When
at
you
work
see
whenever
when they
I'm
don't
like,
put the comma before the...
yeah.
One day in 2018, Ellen Jovin, the founder of a communication skills training firm called Syntaxis, decided to set up a table on the street near her subway stop in Manhattan with a big sign that read, "Grammar Table." Ellen had various reference books stacked on the table, and it was only a matter of minutes before she had her first visitor. Since that day, Ellen and her husband, Brandt Johnson, a filmmaker, have taken the grammar table on the road to every state in the Union. Ellen published a book called Rebel with a Clause in 2022, and she and Brandt also recently completed a wonderful documentary of the same name. Do you have any kind of vivid memory about the day you decided to go out and do this table and what prompted it?
I don't have a vivid memory of a particular day. I know that I was thinking about it for a while and kind of having a mental obstacle in my head about how you do such a thing. You know, do you need a permit? Do you need to get permission from the city of New York? And then I started Googling and trying to Google stuff about city bureaucracy that didn't clarify things for me. I remember sending an email to someone who was on the community board to see if I could get information. And then I finally just decided / realized that it's free speech because I wasn't selling grammar. I was just talking about it. So I just set it up. There's a publisher also who sets up and sells books in the neighborhood. So there was a precedent of a thoughtful human being who, well, I guess he was selling grammar, but there was a precedent of a thoughtful human being using a table, not to sell scarves or, what is that thing called where you do what's that betting game where you have to guess where
The shell game?
Yeah, not that. It wasn't that. It was something serious, like grammar.
Is the sign still the original sign? The sign you use now?
I am pretty sure that I don't have the original sign. I might have the second sign. I think, do you remember, Brandt? I think it broke.
It cracked. We kept it, so we have it, and it looks the same, just had it reprinted. It is Ellen's handwriting and homemade work that we reprinted, so it looks just the same, but I think the very original one cracked.
Hilarious. So it's your own creation. I love it.
Yes, and it has gotten a little bit of criticism from people who are more skilled and trained in the arts than I am.
Ellen, didn't some professional designer say that looking at your sign made his eyes bleed?
Yes, he did. But he conceded that having it look kind of homemade might make me more approachable. So it wasn't all bad.
Absolutely. Right. Were you surprised that it seemed to kind of take off pretty quickly? Like you had a person approach almost immediately, right?
It was immediate. I mean, it definitely wasn't 60 seconds. It was less than a minute. So I was being watched by a couple as I unfolded the table, and I had to prop up the sign because I hadn't. So Brandt made me a handy Velcro system that I used to keep it all together, but I didn't have that first day. I just propped it up on top, the sign up on top of the table, and they were watching me. And literally, as soon as I sat down, one of them had to leave, but the other one came over and talked to me. So I didn't know. I don't think I knew. I knew people would talk to me. I was absolutely 100% sure about that. I didn't know it would be that fast. And I didn't know that it would be quite as interesting to some people as it was, like, especially press. I didn't know that it would, for some reason, it didn't occur to me that that was a press friendly idea. I just thought it'd be fun.
What's it interesting is that you guys end up talking about so much more than grammar. I mean, some of these conversations end up being so digging so much deeper into other things, like therapy and the importance of communication and language. That's one of the things I loved about it.
Also, Brandt's good looks, that's come up.
Yes. Yeah, it was good that you got those clips in there, Brandt.
I don't know how those got in there. Who edited this thing?
The idea for the book come about? How long were you doing the table before that came?
Well, I had been trying to think of a grammar book angle for a while.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and I have written other books that are more guide types of things, but I had been trying to think of something for a few years. I didn't want to just do a standard grammar book, although I like that kind of stuff, but I didn't really see a market need for it. So it didn't seem like it would be a great idea for me. And then the grammar table idea, now I forgot what the question was.
When did the book idea come about? How did the book idea come about?
When I was sitting on the street, people said to me, this should be a book. So this is how dim-witted I am. I couldn't think of that myself, even though I'd been trying to think of a book angle. I don't quite understand that, but I think it really was just such a project of an impulse. Like I just wanted to do it. And somehow that blocked the path in my brain that connected the part where I was trying to think of a book idea with my latest grammar activities.
They're going to be brought together by a mediator.
That's really what happened. And actually, I had an agent. She had taken a grammar class I took a few years earlier. And so I'd been pinging ideas off of her periodically that didn't go over well. and then I said to her one day, hey, people at the grammar table have been saying that I should write a book. And she said, that's funny because we were talking about that at the agency. Like there'd been an article about me, and then they ended up having a discussion just totally separately. One of the other agents there didn't even know I was a client. And he thought, he was just thinking this maybe could be a book. And so it was.
Everything kind of converged then. So did the tour of the States come about before you started on the book?
No,
was it simultaneous?
Brandt and I were hanging outside. We were hanging out outside our building, basically. So, and then I don't really remember the exact order, Brandt, but Brandt, you started filming a bit, and we sort of all around the same time conceived of the idea of touring, because it's not as though you don't have enough grammar people in New York to talk to. There are lots of grammar guest possibility here. It's not possibilities here, but we started talking about traveling around, and so that went into the book proposal, that idea of traveling around. Brandt would film, I would write a book, and that would be the project.
So, Brandt, what prompted you to start filming it?
Initially, I was just hanging around in the on the periphery on a bench or something nearby and just taking it in, and that was a lot of fun. And after a while, it dawned on me that what was happening there, it was fun and hilarious, but it was also moving and connecting and beautiful. It felt like this oasis of human connection. And then, as now it's such a divided time politically and socially, and to see what was happening with Ellen and strangers who would approach her and be so present and open and human, it was just really powerful and moving, and I felt as though I wanted to share it with the world. I was feeling, though, that introducing cameras and microphones into what was this environment that I was appreciating so much just in its simplicity was a risk. And ultimately, Ellen and I decided that was a risk that was worth taking. And as it happens, I think it really was. And people weren't so thrown by the technology there, and just they would see it's there, just sort of part of what the environment was, and forget about it and just really be able to connect with Ellen.
Yeah, that really showed through in the film too. It didn't seem like people were intimidated by the fact that they were being filmed. So you probably had to get approval from all the people that were in the film, right?
For sure. That was a big part of the whole thing, making sure people signed releases. We would ask them after we had interactions, and they would clearly be aware of the filming and everything, and say, would you sign to make it official? And almost every single person was happy to. And those who didn't want to be in the film were not, of course.
I just want to point out that this was a real logistical challenge, because there is no crew. It's just the two of us. So I'm sitting at the table trying to conjugate verbs, and Brandt is operating multiple cameras, sound stuff. And then one of us has to get the release because we don't have anyone else there to do it. So there might be someone already waiting to ask another grammar question, or Brandt is trying to film something. So it was a little bit nuts sometimes. And I start more comfortable with it, but it was that aspect of it. I think Brandt, for me, is, even though I don't like dealing with technology either, but that aspect of me getting the release without messing up the flow of what happened at the table was one of the more challenging things.
And there were times where I would just leave the camera on the tripod, and while Ellen was talking to the next person, I would chase someone down the street with a clipboard and say, "Oh, would you mind signing so we can use this in the film?" And then then they would sign, and then I'd run back to the
That's true. You chased down a lot of people. It was very resourceful, because there were some things that there were quite a few conversations. If you hadn't chased them down, that would have been a problem, because they were really good encounters.
So when you started the tour, was it immediately the plan to go to all the states, or did that sort of evolve over time?
No, I thought the proposal was that we would go to a bunch of states. I don't remember if I don't think I had a specific number in it, but I felt we could do a representative sampling, whatever that would have turned out to mean. But I believe it was when we were driving across Michigan. In Michigan is one of the few states where we made two stops. We stopped in Detroit and in Grand Rapids. And it was around the time that we hit Grand Rapids that I was thinking, we're pretty fast at this, but we don't have time to go to multiple cities in each state. But if we just went to one, you travel one day, you hit the city, you grammar table and film the next day, and then you leave the next day. And if you're about 6 hours from your next destination, that's totally manageable. And we did that a lot. We would, have that kind of pattern. There were some places where they were really close together, and we could even compress it more. But I felt once I realized we could do 50 states, it just seemed so exciting. That's a big difference. And we had each been to 40 something states. So we were already pretty well traveled in the US, but we wanted to get those right, Brandt? We wanted to get those remaining states.
For sure. I was a big fan of the 50 states. In my recollection, I recall, Ellen, you're being more comfortable. Well, we don't have to be obsessive about it and get to every of the 50 states. It'll be fine. Now it's like 50. That is high concept. It is a big deal. Let's do all 50. Let's make this happen. So that's my recollection.
Yeah, I do remember some of that. I just can't remember exactly when it occurred. It's all a blur of grammar and car riding.
I'm sure. Yeah, how long did the actual tour take without the 2-year break?
Yeah, there were a number of loops, so it wasn't a single tour. So we would go out for 4 or 5 weeks, or a few weeks, or 10 days, come back. We have our company, and we would do our corporate work, and then go off and do another tour. So we were doing loops from, say, July of 2019 through January of 2020. That was when the concentrated. So those months were probably most, or a lot of those, that time was on the road.
Yeah, that was 44 of the states in that period, roughly.
COVID ended up being kind of timely, right? Because it gave you time to write the book.
Yeah, it was, but I was really sad. I realized in the larger scheme of things, this is not a big deal, but so much of this project for me is about the importance of human contact and connection. And so it felt very jarring to be so dedicated to that as an idea for a healthy society, that you have to talk to one another face to face. And all of a sudden we couldn't talk to anyone face to face. And we also are we were in New York, we're in New York City. So this was really peak COVID stuff. And we're on the 16th floor. So it felt a little bit like being in this, it's a very large building with a lot of people. To get in and out easily, you have to be in a small-ish elevator, and it affected me more than Brandt. Brandt just worked on the movie. He's easygoing.
So what was the process like as far as working on the movie? Brandt, did you do I know you did all the editing and the music and all that. So did you guys have to communicate much over that, or?
Well,
no, I stayed away.
Yeah. Ellen was working on her book and I was working on the film. So there was, she would ask me to read some stuff occasionally, or I would ask her to look at some stuff occasionally, but they were really quite separate.
That's probably kind of good.
Yeah, no, I think it
is good.
I think it worked out well. And the editing I did entirely myself, for sure. The music, I put a lot of it in place, and then engaged a fantastic music supervisor who came in with a professional eye and suggested other stuff and worked on stuff that I had. And so that was a really great collaborative effort. And at the very end, two sets of stuff that have to happen are the final color and the final sound mixing and editing. And so I engage people who are professionals at that. And so that was also a wonderful collaborative effort to invite people into the project in a way that was really satisfying and gave an incredibly wonderful outcome, I thought, from their work.
The music. There was so many points where you had the choice that you made for, like, even the transitional stuff. There was one little clip that was sort of like Sergio Leone sounding, where you're going into the Western states. Were some of those transitional pieces just random clips from songs, or where did you get that stuff?
No, not random. This was hours and hours and days, weeks, months of this. Like it was an important part of it. And there are over 40 clips in the film of music. And one of the sources was the person I worked with, the music supervisor, Janet Billig-Rich. She also manages Lisa Loeb, And so we had that relationship, and I love Lisa Loeb music. And so we used Lisa Loeb songs, and the other significant source was APM Music, which is a catalog of over 1 million songs. And you can license their music, and the endless tracks that you can consider that would be perfect for any little, those a transitional moment or other moments. So I used that source heavily, and it was a wonderful resource.
You have to pay for those?
You do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
oh yeah,
yes,
I love the final song with Lisa. That was a nice moment too. And then
I
my other
love
favorite,
that.
yeah, it's a great song. And then the other favorite moment I had was when you had the little choir, or the
yes, in Salt Lake City. Yeah. Thank you. The one other piece that I was excited to license, and we did this directly with Sony, was Evil Woman by Electric Light Orchestra.
Yeah, your discussion was hilarious about that. Medieval Woman.
That's right. So we licensed that as well.
Okay.
Apparently, I'm not the only person who thinks that Evil Woman was Medieval Woman.
Oh, really?
That way. Yeah, I forget, someone told us or wrote to us. It just made me feel better to know that I'm not the only person, misunderstanding. I also want to just, as I'm listening to Brandt talk about this, I want to underscore how completely uninvolved I was, because I don't know about like any of this stuff. I cannot even take, we have plenty of examples from just the other day. I can't even take a video of something that's holding still. Like I turn on the video after the thing is over. It's just, I really have no knowledge of this. And so one thing that I find funny is that I am in the movie, but I didn't do anything for the movie. I just sat in the other room and stayed away, because this is not my area and it's not something I'm comfortable with or inclined or naturally inclined to do. So I consider myself to be the conjugator. I am the movie's chief conjugator. And watching Brandt figure out stuff, this was his first feature film, to see him figure this out, and like the incredible technical and artistic hurdles and the knowledge he had to acquire, it was very impressive. I am really I don't have the patience for that kind of thing. I would just still be sitting in the original park, not with no video. And it would be a totally different thing. It's really having some of those conversations memorialized. It's like these people they barely remember me, but I really remember them because he's made them part of my life through the filming.
I just want to take a little commercial break here and mention that this podcast is partly sponsored by Dzonk Books, who published my last novel, Cold Country. And you can look up Dzonk at dzancbooks.org. They were named the best small press at AWP a couple of years ago. So they published a lot of off the beaten path, wonderful novels. And I just also want to mention, so I met Ellen. It was one of those friendships that developed over Facebook, and I can't even remember how we were introduced to each other, whether it was through somebody else or we just connected by our common interest in books or whatever. But anyway, I was intrigued by the idea of the grammar table from the very beginning, and when her book came out, I immediately bought it and just loved it. And then she started her book tour, and her mother happens to live in Bozeman, which is just a couple hours from where I am. So she asked me to interview her at the Country Bookshelf in Bozeman. So that was a great experience, and I was disappointed that Brandt wasn't able to come to that particular event. So it's nice to finally meet him. And of course, I'm not surprised that he's just as engaging and entertaining as Ellen is. So that's a little bit of the backstory. And let's get back to the interview.
To teach my ex-husband the difference between well and good, and I should have known that very minute that it would be X someday.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah, I'm ready. We're doing it.
Do you speak another language?
I am not really fluent in English.
What do you?
I'm not born and raised here in Hawaii.
The motto of the United States, how can we go from many into one? Pluribus unum. Like, how can we do that?
Where are you from?
I'm from Philippines.
Oh, you are? So do you speak Tagalog?
I do speak Tagalog.
Comment vous appelez-vous?
Joel.
Ellen.
Hi.
You know, you are fluent in English.
Really?
Yes, you really are. So give yourself credit for that.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that.
Ça m'a beaucoup aussi soulagé. Je me disais, je suis seul ici ou comment?
I was having a bad day today.
You were?
Then,
is it better now?
It's better now.
We're all connected by the words we use. It's like a transcendent joy for me to sit there and have someone I didn't know before come up and talk to me, and we share a laugh over some language point, and I know one more person in the world.
Grammar is obviously not the most fun thing to teach.
It's the most fun.
The editing was absolutely fabulous in this film. And one of the things that really impressed me about it was that most of these exchanges were really short, but they all had something to offer that was really significant, I felt like, you know, and the ones that were just a little bit longer were more powerful. Like my favorite was the Filipino woman. That was such an amazing exchange. I wanted you to get up and hug her after that. You guys had that little moment.
Did I hug her?
You didn't. No.
Well, not
on camera.
Maybe
after, though, right?
I feel certain we all hugged. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that was a really moving.
It was beautiful. Yeah. The other one was the homeless guy, and I think that was in Salt Lake, where you could tell he was just so moved to be spoken to, basically. Yeah, stuff like that.
That was one of my most favorite experiences of the whole trip. That what you're just saying.
I hope
that
he's
connection.
okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oops. I should.
Yeah. No.
I didn't use my professional language.
He was so young too. I mean, he was. Yeah. He looked like he was probably in his 20s, right?
Yep.
I think so. He could have been 30, maybe, but
yeah. So
maybe.
Some of the other things I wanted to bring up were, I love the way you worked those two young guys into just like you did in the book. Those guys like make recurring appearances, the ones that open the film. And I also love the fact that they brought up y'all, and then the women at the end in Hawaii brought up y'all too. That was a beautiful bit of bookending.
Thank you for noticing that, Russell.
Yes.
I felt so pleased about that. The ending of the film and the beginning, in fact, were just puzzles for me of how best to launch into this and how to end it and have it have some unity, have an arc, have it feel satisfying, have it feel propelled from the start, and have it give a nice conclusion. And it wasn't at all clear for years how that was going to happen, and that was really unsettling. And when those women appeared on Kailua Beach, it was like the skies opened up, and it was, is this really happening? And I hope I'm still recording. Is the button on? Is it, please? I'm not messing anything. Is the sound happening? This is really, it's happening. And I knew while I was recording that is the final scene. There is a scene after that, of course, with Ellen in front of Bethesda Fountain, which is the final scene, which I feel really pleased about as well. But this stuff was all in flux for so long, and I just found it in the editing of it, in the considering of the material. I had over 400 hours of footage, and finding the story and the moments was really a journey.
That was so great that the first words out of their mouth were, "Oh my God, we just read your book." That must have been like,
now.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
They're amazing. Yeah, they're wonderful people.
So another I just want to throw out a few more of my favorite moments. When you were talking about ending a sentence with a preposition, and the woman said, "Here's what I'm talking about, bitch." She just added. There were so many wonderful little bits of humor like that.
I don't know what one person is going to say. Like what different people say is very surprising. So I didn't expect that to come out of her mouth. So I got such a kick out. I mean, I've heard that joke before, but I got such a kick out of the fact that she said it in the way she said it.
That's one of the things that I love most about the grammar table and about the film is that our expectations and our preconceptions about just get exploded. I mean, those guys in Decatur, Alabama that you just mentioned, were they strolled up to the table, and just by looking at them, you might have some prejudice about what sort of interaction you're going to have. And the interactions were magnificent. They wanted to stay. They stayed for an hour. They were at the table for an hour, and I rolled.
That guy was so into it.
Single take for an hour. Yeah. So I mean, so that was just like, okay. So forget about that, misconception. One more.
Yeah.
And the other guy who talked less there, he goes around, doing firefighting and he travels around doing firefighting and rescuing people from fires. I mean, they were really interesting. I like the complexity of this in the sense that you can get to know, like if you roll into town as a tourist, it's one experience. If you roll into town with a grammar table, totally different experience. There's such an immediate potential intimacy there. And it's also, you see some complexity. I mean, we learned complicated things about people. It's not, whereas the closest, coffee shop, it's people would launch into stuff about school or parents or, feelings of insecurity. It's a complicated and intimate thing that sometimes happens.
Speaking of those two guys, the one had one of my favorite lines, which was, "I don't normally talk to girls that are smart enough to know what that is."
Yeah, that was quite a line.
Oh, the redheaded woman in Little Rock. She was awesome too. You want to talk about her?
That thought Brandt's smile was cute?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, you mean the one who thought I was precious?
Yeah.
That one?
It's so funny how she made it into the movie.
I don't know how that, these editors these days,
I know.
Just stop paying attention to them and all sorts of stuff just gets into the movie. Just have to.
Russell, I don't know if you noticed the woman you probably did notice, but the woman in the background who didn't want to come any closer. So that was her daughter. And I just thought it was hilarious to watch the family dynamics. It wasn't the only time that a parent and a child had been, had a different attitude or approach to the grammar table.
Yeah.
So I love the family dynamics too.
The girl's like, "I'm good." And I like I like the woman who said, "I should have known my ex-husband would be an ex eventually," when I had to explain the difference between well and good. Yeah.
It was amazing.
Concord, New Hampshire. Yeah. She was hilarious.
Yeah, and she actually already knew about the grammar table. Do you remember that, Brandt? She came up and she had seen something about it. So she was very happy to talk language stuff with us.
So has this project taken over your lives, or are you still doing Syntaxis?
Still doing Syntaxis. We're pretty busy actually with Syntaxis while the movie stuff is quite busy. So it's an extremely busy time.
You want to just briefly explain what Syntaxis is?
Sure. It's a communication skills consulting and training firm. We work with primarily corporate clients on their writing and speaking executive presence, anything from the inception and formulation of an idea through writing it down or having it come out of your mouth. We work with folks on that.
Pretty awesome that you had a profession that was bringing in paychecks while you're doing all this, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's also, I find it awesome that, to borrow your word, Russell, that there's a thematic unity also to the stuff that we're doing with our corporate clients about communicating. I mean, ultimately, it's about reaching people with writing or speaking and being genuinely present and connecting with people. And that's the stuff of the grammar table and the stuff of the film. I mean, it is a romp. It is a grammar road trip movie in all its silly hilarity, but at its heart, it's about human connection and reaching other people in a divided time. And that's the stuff of communication.
I do just want to mention one thing about the corporate stuff. When we were doing this primarily before, it was pre-COVID. So although we had occasionally taught remote classes, we weren't doing a lot of that. And so when we were on the road, we'd do, maybe a 3-week trip, and we'd come back and be like running back to do a bunch of training sessions in person before we'd then take off from New York again. It doesn't have to be like that anymore. I mean, I just taught a remote class from where I'm sitting right this moment talking to you this morning. So I think now we have a little bit more flexibility because of the change in the, well, not just the American workplace, but the global workplace, that so much more happens through, say, Zoom now than it used to.
The podcast I was doing before this was more politically inclined. And so one of the things that I heard over and over again from both sides was, people need to talk more. There needs to be more communication between the two sides but it just feels like there's not a lot of that actually happening. How do you guys feel about that as far as the role of arts and culture in our society today?
I actually have thought a great deal about the effectiveness of talking. So I am a big fan of talking, but I think especially talking online, which is, writing does not, there are lots of things that can go wrong with writing that are less likely to go wrong if you're speaking face to face. But what I see online is so much focus, and in public discourse as well, so much focus on what in the end, if you do all the math of this, the very small percentage of things that we are different about, that we disagree about. So people focus on the things that are most likely to inflame, and you cannot have a healthy communication flow that way. You have to spend some of your time on things that we have in common that build connections. And so art, culture, those are at least they certainly are a big part of it. I mean, they too can inflame depending on what's involved, but in general, bringing people together in a positive way. I don't care if it's, building a canoe or painting a school or whatever, like something that's positive, that is allowing people to work cooperatively, as opposed to practicing different ways to come at each other about the things that they're never going to agree about anyway. It's not effective. And I also believe we're meant to know less about everyone's point of view. I mean, if you just think about, if we're online with 1 billion people through our social media accounts, but in reality, our community is 200 people, in our building or our town or whatever, that's where our life is. Principally, we're not meant to know all of the inside thoughts of those people. We're not meant to dwell on the thoughts of everyone else out in the universe. It's just too much information, and it doesn't allow us just to be and to breathe and to, shake hands.
What Ellen does at the grammar table and what the film is about, by some measure, is a political activity, but not in any overt way, but a profoundly positive and powerful aspect of our social interactions. And that's political. I mean, and there is one scene actually where someone comes there, a red Make America Great cap, and he comes up to the table, and Ellen and he have a great exchange, connection. Ellen meets him where he is, he meets her where she is. They have a nice exchange, and he goes off, and they don't talk about, I'm wearing a cap, or you wearing a cap, or I'm not, or what's the political. And those sorts of moments, I think, are just wonderful and political in a sense, but not in an overt way.
You make a really good point, Ellen, as far as the fact that most of us agree about so many issues, but so much of the focus now is on all the things that, or on the few things that are that really designed to inflame people, right? And it's infuriating that so many people focus on those and just keep throwing fuel on those flames instead of trying to find the common ground.
Yeah, I also think that even someone hearing what I said, that we have so much in common, so much more in common, I think some people might react to that and say, well, that's not really true. But if you really catalog the actions of a human being from waking up in the morning to going to bed at night, there is a lot of overlap. And I think it's a distortion. What we have right now is a distortion, and it's an artificial focus on a misunderstanding of our commonality.
What you said, Brandt, too, about the fact that really that moment with the guy with the MAGA hat was the only moment in the entire film where there's any indication of the political ideology of any of the people that you talk to. So that was kind of interesting. It was a good way to look at it.
He didn't have any intention of making something overtly political. He may have forgotten even that he was wearing the hat, but he was wearing it. Right. That's sort of an obvious indication of his political affiliation, but it didn't come in. So that was a nice juxtaposition to have him with basically an outward banner to here's my political affiliation, but here I am with Ellen, and that just melts away, and we're going to have a connection.
I also want to mention one thing. When I was working on the book, I had to do some fact checking. So before it was published, I did fact checking. I Googled some of the people that I encountered to make sure I got details about them correct. And it was at that point that I realized, because you can see some of their accounts, I realized that some of them had political views that really surprised me. Like if I had just had to guess on the spot based on a conversation, I was wrong. And that to me in itself is really relevant and telling, because it wasn't when we weren't focusing on it.
It wasn't an issue. There was no agenda. So what's the plan for the film? I assume you're trying to get some festivals and stuff?
We are self-distributing, and that means we have already booked events with universities, museums. We're going to be taking it to corporate events. We have it's not sealed, so I don't know if I can say this publicly, but a national television broadcast coming up later in the year. And fabulous. Thank you very much. No, it's very exciting. So we are bringing it to the people. As the Grammar Table brought grammar to the people, it's really a similar sort of ethos behind the film, where we're bringing the film to the people and setting up viewings, screenings with Q&A with Ellen and me at any organization that wants to have a grammar party, whether that's a university, a corporation, a museum, or other places.
Notice that he said with Ellen and me and not Ellen and I.
Yes, that was one of the more interesting conversations. So many little moments like that where you focused on things that something people think about all the time, or little pet peeves and stuff like that. Do you still take the table out now and then, or has that pretty much fallen by the wayside?
I absolutely take the table out. And it's funny to me. The question is funny to me because I can't imagine not taking the table out. It was the source of, it was like the perfect realization of my the combination. It indulges the combination of personality traits I have, my, intellectual interests, my desire for humor and laughter in an outside, place with light and air. It just is everything that makes me happy. So I plan to keep doing it until until the grammar police come and haul me away.
It was interesting. There were a few people that had to flex their muscles and say, "Oh, you can't do that here." It was just so silly. But yeah, I loved. There was so much laughter in this film. That was one of my favorite things about it. Just all these discussions brought out so much humor. And
my greatest hope for this, or in the top echelon of great hopes for this, is that it, as I set out to make it, is actually first that this will be entertaining, because this is, I'm asking people to come see a movie, and it should be fun, and they should be entertained, they should be moved, they should laugh, cry, they should feel the experience in a positive way. So it shouldn't feel like work. So it wasn't, okay, you should go see this grammar movie because you're going to learn grammar, and I'm going to sit through. Now I know more grammar at the end. Okay. So it needed to be entertaining first. So I'm so pleased that you found it that, Russell.
Way more than grammar. Just like your book was, Ellen. I mean, the book was engaging for the same reason. So I wasn't surprised that you were able to capture that with the film too. What's the best place to order the book? And I guess we won't know about where to see the film for a while, but
well, you can know where to see the film at rebelwithaclause.com. So we have screenings booked. We have the New York City premiere on March 4th, and tickets are on sale now. And so we actually have screenings set up around the country. So, and we're booking more. So rebelwithaclause.com
Brandt,
for
don't forget
information about the film.
The key fact about the premiere. You didn't mention.
What is the key fact about the premiere?
That it's on National Grammar Day.
Yes, March 4th is National Grammar Day. That's right.
What?
And at rebelwithaclause.com also is where you can get information about hosting a screening. If you want to bring this to your community, bring it to your company, bring it to your institution, that's where to check it out.
Well, thank you guys. This has been fabulous. I knew it would be.
Thank you. Well, it's really, I appreciate the sensibility you brought to watching the film. I know Brandt appreciated how you noticed the y'all thing, right, Brandt?
Yes, I really did. And so many other subtleties that you noticed,
yeah.
Russell. I appreciate the careful viewing that you gave it more than once, and that you appreciated the experience of the film. That was wonderful for me to hear your response to it. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Well, he's an artist. You're an artist, so you do appreciate those things. But it's really special to hear that. It meant a lot to me because I know how much work Brandt has put into it. So it's really nice to see someone seeing the beauty in what he's done.
Why we do this shit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because people occasionally will say, "How did you do that one thing?" Yeah. Thank you so much. I really did genuinely I thought this movie was fabulous. I hope it gets a lot of attention.
Thank you so much, Russell.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of The Song of Roland. I'm Russell Rowland, your host, and I was so happy to talk with Ellen Jovin, author of Rebel with a Clause, and her husband, Brandt Johnson, who directed the new documentary of the same name. You can find all the information about upcoming screenings for this film, or you can book a screening yourself at rebelwithaclause.com. I also want to thank my son Fletcher for writing the music for this podcast. Please join me again next time on The Song of Roland, American Culture at Full Volume, where we turn everything up to 11.